broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to the Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I am your host, John Parker. Today is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the episode to help us think more clearly and more queerly on the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. Coming up after us, because clearly there's always a lot of news going on. You're going to get the best in progressive news and analysis on the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950 KTNF, and Choose Views with Richard Chu, also right here on WCPT 820. As we've been telling you all week long for the listeners in Minnesota, the 15th annual Walk for Recovery is this Saturday, September 13th. Team AM 950 will join hundreds of other teams supporting Minnesota Recovery Connection's Walk for Recovery on the grounds of the Minnesota State Capitol. The Walk for Recovery is a powerful expression of the positive impact that people in recovery can make. Help us break the stigma of addiction by joining Team AM 950 at the walk, or you can make a donation. All proceeds will help Minnesota Recovery Connection continue their mission to strengthen the recovery community through peer-to-peer support, public education, and advocacy. When you sign up to walk with TM AM 950, you'll also have the chance to score a pair of tickets to the Rally Caps for Recovery Twins game on Tuesday, September 16th, when the Twins take on the Yankees. And the team that raises the most funds at this year's walk will be featured on the 2026 Walk for Recovery official t-shirt. So if you can't make it to the Capitol on September 13th, you can still support Team AM 950 by donating online. Every dollar makes a difference now more than ever. So you can go to minnesotarecovery.org/walk. You can register there to join AM 950's team. Of course, you can donate there as well and get info about all of the Recovery Month events that are happening. That website is minnesotarecovery.org/walk. And that leads us into what we're talking about today: recovery and the LGBTQ community. My guest is Molly Sinclair. Molly is a person in long-term recovery with a passion for supporting others on their recovering journeys. After 15 years as a paralegal, Molly changed career fields. Molly serves as the Family Peer Recovery Specialist, where she supported family members of people struggling with substance use disorder. She currently provides direct support to people experiencing substance use disorder and addiction as a certified peer recovery specialist in the LGBTQIA2S+ community at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute. In her free time, Molly loves spending time with her wife, two rambunctious boys, dogs, and playing sober softball. Molly, welcome to the Gailey Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so let's start with what I was just talking about, the Walk for Recovery. So I gave the overview spiel. What can you tell us about this weekend's walk?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the walk this weekend. It's Minnesota Recovery Connection's single biggest fundraiser for the year. Oh, wow. We expect somewhere in the 3,000 to 5,000 people range. Hopefully, let's hope for good weather. That tends to bring out more people, but it's going to be a great time, and it's a family-friendly event. There'll be a bounce house, face painting for kids. There'll be hundreds of partner booths that'll have all kinds of swag. So I hope that all listeners will think about coming on down to the state capitol on Saturday to enjoy just a great day to celebrate recovery. It's from 10 to 3. I think the walk's at 1. So
Perfect. I do want to mention for our listeners, if you hear construction noises, there's some construction happening in the background. So no worries there. It's not happening around you. It's happening here in the background of our interview today. Do folks go to minnesotarecovery.org and sign up there, but can folks, if they need be, sign up for the walk on Saturday morning?
Sure, they can just show up. It's a free event, and I believe there will be a registration table there for people to register on site.
Perfect. And September is Recovery Month. So can you share with us some of the other events that MRC is hosting and organizing this month?
Well, as you mentioned, we have the Rally Caps for Recovery. that happens, I believe, on September the 16th. And it's Twins game versus the Yankees. I think that we've designated 2,000 tickets for folks that are in the recovery community to join us. I wish I had more information about that, but I think that there's some recovery related events happening before the game, recognizing that it's part of Recovery Month. There's a gratitude breakfast. I think it's on the 25th. I'm not sure that that's technically sponsored by MRC, but it's a good event nonetheless. And then all the other RCOs, which are recovery community organizations in Minnesota, are hosting their own Recovery Month events around the state. So be sure to check out your local recovery community organization and see what's on tap. One helpful website is the Minnesota Alliance for Recovery Community Organizations, also known as MARCO. And they have a calendar on their website which lists all of the Recovery Month activities going on around the state.
Fantastic. I did note because there's so many gays that love brunch. So there is the breakfast on September 25th at the Hoverston Chapel at Augsburg University. And there's a keynote speaker, John Magnuson, who is the founder of Relevant Recovery, who will be at the breakfast on September 25th. Of course, you can check out all of the events at the website that Molly said, and you can also go to minnesotarecovery.org/walk to sign up for the walk that is happening this weekend. Okay. Talking about recovery now.
Yeah.
Do you mind if maybe we can start sort of an overview of, recovery, and then we can get more deeply into the LGBTQ work and the community work that you do there. And something as I was prepping for our conversation today is around language and how language can be part of the healing and recovery process. Can you kind of give us an overview of what I mean by when I'm saying that, when I'm looking at the literature about I don't want to say like the correct use of language, but language is really important to the recovery process. So can you help unpack for listeners what we mean by that?
Sure. So like you said, language is incredibly important because stigma is such a prevalent problem when we talk about substance use disorder. So we shift our language to use words and terms that help people understand that addiction is not a moral failing. It's a treatable medical condition. And so we use terms like substance use disorder. We use terms like, if somebody's in recovery or if they've had a reuse, we use that term as opposed to relapse. There's a lot of different terms that we use to effectively take the stigma out of the issue, because I think that stigma is one of the things that keeps people sick, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is been shown scientifically, like in studies, reducing the stigma is a huge way of increasing the treatment options and the prognosis, right?
For sure. For sure.
Speaking of prognosis, compared to I was looking into the research and finding that compared to other medical diagnoses, substance use disorder does have a very good prognosis with high percentages of folks achieving full remission. Can you talk about that? Because I think how we sometimes see things portrayed in, on TV and, on films is that it's impossible, right? And it's just never going to happen. Can you talk about the prognosis and generally speaking, the folks that you work with, that it's a lot better than I think the media would like to let on?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an example. Recovery is possible. And at Minnesota Recovery Connection, we like to say that people are in recovery when they say they are. And so recovery can look a lot of different ways. It's not about just going to an AA meeting and being quote unquote sober. It's about making a positive change in your life that leads to more health and better well-being and a healthier life. So in terms of how we talk about people being in recovery. We don't label people according to, if they're abstinent or not. We say that people are in recovery when they say they are. And that broadens the umbrella, so to speak. So somebody that has 5 days of sobriety is well on their way to hope and healing. And so I'm sort of rambling here, but no. I think that it's important that we acknowledge that recovery looks a lot of different ways. And it doesn't just look like what we've seen, people being involved in a 12-step program necessarily. There are many, many paths to recovery. And those include, they can look like hanging out with other people in recovery, sober events, being on for me, I'm on a sober softball team. It can be working out, going to a gym. It can be, taking nature walks.
Yes,
So,
I have to fit in a break here, and I want to get into all of those because it was really fascinating to me to look into the literature and see there's so many different ways that folks can approach recovery and how they get involved with that and the treatment process. So I'm going to take a break, and we're going to have more with Molly Sinclair when we come back. First, I want to share about our travel partner, Travel Marquette, and the reason why is that Marquette, Michigan, has become a very special place for me. For the past 10 years, I have been going to Marquette twice a year. And part of the reason why I love it is I don't have to worry about traveling while queer there because it's a university town, super blue city, and a reliably blue county with a very active pride organization. And Marquette has so many things that I need from a long weekend getaway, rather. Good restaurants, excellent bookstores, relaxing hiking, time out in nature, delicious bakeries. I've already been there once this year for Pride. I'm headed back this fall, and I'm so grateful to be in partnership with Travel Marquette because the world sucks right now, and it's nice to just be in a place where I can be myself. If this sounds like something that you want to do, you can visit travelmarquette.com to start your journey. You're listening to The Gailey Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. This is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode where we sit down with a guest for the episode to take a deep dive into an issue facing the LGBTQ and allied community. My guest today is Certified Peer Recovery Specialist at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute, Molly Sinclair. Molly, before the break, we were talking about all the various ways that folks that recovery looks like, the pathways into it, and what it looks like when you're in recovery. Can we start to unpack those again for our audience?
Sure. So help me a little bit about, in terms of what you're looking for.
Well, I think like you were saying that it could just, I think the major media, I think, stereotype is we just see depictions of the 12-step program.
Right. Yeah.
And that's pretty much all that we see. And you were kind of beginning to list out, like, there are a lot of different things, like you were saying for yourself, that's sober softball. So what are those activities that folks do to kind of help them in their recovery journey?
Well, there's all kinds of sober sports. There's sober softball, there's sober climbing, there's sober run clubs. I think there's a sober sailing club. So physical activity can be a really helpful pathway. It certainly has been for me. There's also, outside of the 12-step model, there are all recovery meetings that Minnesota Recovery Connection hosts, and those look a little bit different. They start with a check-in, and people will kind of rate how they're how they're doing in different, we call them the 8 dimensions of wellness, how they're doing in the different dimensions of their life, and where they want to work on things. And then they're sharing. So it's a little bit different than a 12-step meeting. Mm-hmm. There's also just connection with the sober community. And that can look a lot of different ways. So I think there are as many ways to recover as there are people in recovery. And it does not have to just look like somebody sitting in a 12-step meeting. Though, and I don't want to knock the 12-step community. It's certainly been a part of my recovery journey. And I think that the fellowship aspect of 12-step programs can be life-saving.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us now about your work and how you approach going about it?
Sure. So I am, the way I describe my work is that I use my lived experience as a person in long-term recovery to help somebody out on their journey. And that looks like asking open-ended questions to help people figure out for themselves what they want their recovery to look like. So it's not dictating to people, you should do this, this, and this. It's, how do you want your recovery to look like? How can I support you on your recovery journey? And so it's person-centered, and it is not, giving people a prescription for how they're supposed to live their lives, but helping people identify what is going to be helpful to them.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us, and I want to, for folks who are just tuning in, we've got some construction going on in the background. So if you hear some hammering noises, just know that we know about it. That is a thing that's happening right now. And I'm here with certified peer recovery specialist at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute, Molly Sinclair. Molly, could you give us sort of on a general level, when folks are working with you or with, MRC or the Pride Institute, like, can you give us examples of what they're saying, of what they want to work on? I imagine that's very various.
It is. It looks a lot of different ways. For some people, it's just resource navigation. So helping them sign up for general assistance or SNAP benefits, helping them navigate getting a driver's license back. So there's a lot of just kind of basic need resource navigation. And then there's also helping people identify what sort of support groups they might like to be a part of. So helping people find meetings if that's part of their journey. It can also look like goal setting. So let's say, somebody has a goal. Transportation's a big issue for a lot of folks that are in recovery. So setting short-term and long-term goals around one specific area, and we try to use SMART goals. So those are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And so when we set those SMART goals, it gives people a real pathway to achieve what they are hoping to achieve. So goal setting is a big component of recovery coaching, essentially.
I want to be mindful of this question because you've mentioned your journey and how it informs the work that you do. Could you share a little bit more about that as you would like to? I don't want to be seen as like prying here. This isn't a Katie Couric gotcha interview.
Oh, great. No, you're going to ask me what newspapers I read?
Yeah. That was a classic interview for the kids who don't know of Katie Couric and at the time vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, who couldn't name a newspaper, let alone know which one she read. So
I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. I started my recovery journey in 2014. I struggled with alcohol use disorder for probably 20 years. And I realized in 2014 that I needed to make a change. So I went to an outpatient program. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. And so that's where I went to an outpatient program. I had a reuse a couple of years later and decided I needed to go back to treatment. So in 2017, I went to an inpatient facility in Nashville as well. And then I continued to struggle for the next 5 years with reuse after reuse and feeling like I was a failure. And in December of 2022, I can't tell you exactly what's switched, what changed. I really leaned into the community, and I started surrounding myself with other sober people and other people that were, had some success in their recovery. And I think that was a big factor. And so I've been sober since December of 2022. What that means to me is that I like to say that I choose that what is I'm blanking on my own phrase, but
we need to fit in a break, so maybe we can recapture that when we come back. I hate to take breaks like this when you're sharing such an important story, but you are listening to the Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF and WCPT 820. We're going to have more with Molly when we come back. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome to the Gailey Show. Welcome back to the Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I am your host, John Parker. It is 33 minutes after the hour. This is our weekly Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the episode to help us think more clearly on the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. Lots happening in the news, so stay tuned on WCPT 820 for Chu's Views with Richard Chu, which is coming up next. And on AM 950, it is the Matt McNeil Show. With me today is Molly Sinclair. Molly is a person in long-term recovery with a passion for supporting others on their recovery journeys. After 15 years as a paralegal, Molly changed career fields. Molly served as a family peer recovery specialist, where she supported family members of people struggling with substance use disorder. She currently provides direct support to people experiencing substance use disorder and addiction as a certified peer recovery specialist in the LGBTQIA2S+ community at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute. Molly, welcome back. So before the break, you were talking. I wanted to ask you a question. What does recovery mean to you, based off of your story that you were sharing with us?
So the way that I describe it is that I now seek wellness rather than relief. And that is what recovery is about for me. For so many years, I just chased relief in the form of alcohol and drugs. And it didn't work. And so when I shifted my goal to seeking wellness as opposed to just relief, things started to kind of fall in line. It was a mentality shift that was really helpful for me to understand kind of what I was after,
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing part of your story with us. I really appreciate that. A number of years ago, I was working in LGBTQ health equity here in the state of Minnesota, and on their education side of the nonprofit that I was at, and I was sort of redigging into my research from that time. And the LGBTQ community, unfortunately, does have higher rates of substance use compared to heterosexual and cisgender folks. But when we look into that research, science, because science helps us understand things, folks, so much of that substance misuse comes as the result of this tragic intersection of targeted bullying and discrimination for being part of the LGBTQ community, sometimes notably from family members, and then a lack of available LGBTQ affirming resources and connections. That's something that I have found in research. You work specifically in recovery with the LGBTQ community. So, what are you seeing from your vantage point?
Well, I can speak on this personally. I know that part of my background. So I was raised in the Southeast in Nashville, Tennessee, and while Nashville is a pretty blue dot in a very red state, there was still, this was in the late 90s when I was coming out. There was still a lot of shame involved, and I'll tell you a quick anecdote. When I came out to my college roommate, she said to me, "Love the sinner, hate the sin." Which, when, you know, we're about to start living together again, and I, you know, get this little quip, you know, it was devastating to me. I felt like a pariah. Like that's all I was. I was just a sinner, you know, when I was just trying to live my truth. So that, among other experiences, sort of informed how I felt about myself and my sexuality. I've grown a lot since then, but I see, so specifically at the Pride Institute where I work part of the time, it's such a welcoming and affirming place for the community. And so I think for people to have a place to go where they are around other people with their same struggles and their same, you know, the same shame and stigma that has informed their past. It's a uniquely healing place. There's, you know, the diversity here is incredible and beautiful. And I feel grateful to be a part of it.
Could you speak to the importance of why having LGBTQ specific places and recovery programs are so important for the community? Because I know I've talked to some people like, you know, well, what does it matter? You know what I mean? There's Hazelden and there's, you know, other places. Like, why does it need to be LGBTQ specific? So can you talk to and help our listeners unpack that more?
Well, I think that the LGBTQIA2S+ community has a unique experience in the world. And, you know, you're not always going to be around people. There's just there's still homophobia in the world, you know, and there are people that just don't get it. I think that the culture that we kind of grow up in, like the bar scene, I know for me, the only place to meet other gay people in Nashville was the gay bar. And so there's just it's a unique experience. And so to be affirmed and know that you can bring your whole self to the recovery process it is really, I don't want to say the word healing again, but it is helpful to be able to be your whole person, to live authentically and know that you're not going to be judged for that.
I am joined by a certified peer recovery specialist at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute, Molly Sinclair. We do have some construction going on in the background now. Those are the hammering noises that you're hearing there. Molly, when you're saying that, like even when you just said and I imagine when you are in a group recovery or frankly otherwise, and you know, you shared the story about, you know, a roommate saying, you know, hate the sin, love the sinner. And I'm like, oh my God, how many times did I hear that? You know, there's that connection, you know what I mean, that you can have there that other folks just may not know about what coming out is like, or navigating a workplace, and like, do I tell what I'm going through, who I'm, dating or seeing? And there is such a unique difference that I'm so happy that we have organizations like the Pride Institute and folks like you who are doing this work specifically with the community. It's so important.
Mm-hmm. And I feel honored to be able to do the work. So,
can you talk about I know we talked a little bit earlier about the various ways that recovery can look like. Can you talk about entry points to recovery, like the areas that people can begin the journey, begin that work?
Well, for certain substance use disorders like alcohol use disorder and people that are struggling with getting off benzodiazepines, it's really dangerous to just quit. And so detox centers are the safest place for somebody that is trying to stop using those substances to go first. Treatment centers are appropriate for some people, not all. There are also intensive outpatient programs that might be better suited for some people. There are support groups like Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma, 12-step groups, all recovery meetings that provide a safe place for people to go and be amongst their fellows. There, as I mentioned earlier, there are various, in the Twin Cities, there are a ton of sober sporting opportunities like sober softball, sober climbing, sober running, sober sailing. Mm-hmm. And so any place, I think, that people can be in fellowship with other people that have struggled with substance use disorder is empowering and an effective way to kind of keep people in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Could you share a little bit about, or a lot of it, if you'd like, around if you are a person who has a partner or a family member that you feel may have substance use disorder, like what are the best ways that that person should go around talking to their family member or their partner?
I think that being compassionate is the most effective way to approach somebody that you feel is struggling with substances. So I don't believe that tough love works. I think it just drives people deeper into isolation. So being curious, asking open-ended questions to your loved one, like what might a change look like? How might you go about that change? Just being genuinely curious as opposed to prescriptive about what you think they should do. Mm-hmm. There's also other support groups like CODA and Al-Anon that people can go to for support if they need. There's also Smart Recovery family and friends groups around, which is a more evidence-based approach. Mm-hmm. I used to work at an organization called Thrive Family Recovery Resources. And as you mentioned, I was a family peer recovery specialist. So I did recovery coaching for people that were family members. And we would help them walk through their relationship with their loved one in a way that acknowledged the human, the humanness of the person, that they're not just an addict, they're a human being that's struggling. And so as far as the approach, I think meeting people where they're at and being curious are the two probably most helpful ways of being with somebody that you think is struggling.
Mm-hmm. For the person in recovery, like if you're, let's look at a household, family. if you're a person in recovery and then you've got family members, like what is the ideal thing that the person in recovery is asking for in terms of support, and the ideal things that the family members are providing? Like what is the optimal way that this is looking like in the home for the family?
I mean, it can look a lot of different ways, but ideally, you would have somebody that recognizes that they might want help, and be open to asking their family members for, assistance, reaching out to either a treatment provider or maybe taking them to an open meeting where everyone's welcome. I think just making sure that you're not meeting a struggling person with shame or stigma, and just being loving and compassionate is the best course. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, yeah, for sure. And not saying stuff like hate the sin, love the sinner.
Yeah, and not shoulding on people.
Yeah.
It's never helpful when people tell people what they should and should not be doing.
I like that phrase. Don't should on people. I am talking with certified peer recovery specialist at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute, Molly Sinclair. We're going to have more with Molly when we come back. You are listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 and WCPT 820. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am John Parker. We are coming up on the top of the hour. My guest today is certified peer recovery specialist at Minnesota Recovery Connection and the Pride Institute, Molly Sinclair. We are talking about recovery and the LGBTQ community. And Molly, during the break, you were telling me about a pretty big statistic about the community. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, so there's an estimate that 30% of the LGBT community struggles with some form of addiction, whether that's alcohol, substances, or process addictions. The prevalence, and that's compared to like 9% of the general population that struggle with some form of addiction. So if you combine alcohol, substances, and tobacco, addiction is 2 to 4 times higher in the LGBT community than that of the general population. So it is an issue that is particularly acute in the LGBT community, and deserves special attention. So I just found those statistics, I won't say sobering, but surprising.
And this will be a great question for you. When I was doing health education, and I found this was about 10 years ago, LGBTQ health equity conversations, and I'd bring up data like this, and it would always make queer people squeamish because they're like, don't tell people that because it makes, we have to be these perfect models of, LGBTQ stuff. And when we say stuff like these numbers, then it just gives the right, like MAGA and all of them, an excuse to like come after us. And then, or I would talk to folks who'd be like, well, see, there's something wrong in the LGBTQ community. Like if it was all okay, then people wouldn't be having substance use disorders. And in conversation with me, sort of unpack that this is largely because of the minority stress that LGBTQ folks are going through. Can you help unpack these numbers for us?
Yeah. So let's just think about what might fuel addiction. Mm-hmm. So there's social pressures. There's lack of access to adequate health care in some of these populations. There's prejudice, homophobia. So those social pressures that you were mentioning. And then when you add to that, where do gay people get together? Mm-hmm. In bars, and parties where there's a lot of drugs and alcohol running around. So we're at this nexus of opportunity for there to be substance use disorder. It's sort of a perfect storm. So it's not a moral failing. It is a culmination of a lot of different factors that that make it, when you think about it and you put it into context, it makes a lot of sense.
And at those bars, I mean, you've got Molly and poppers and ketamine and all, not just alcohol being served over the counter. I live with epilepsy, and alcohol gets me to my seizure threshold, so I had to like cut it out completely. And I was so bummed because I was like, I don't want to go to bars and pubs anymore. Like I'm just cutting it out. And this was a number of years ago where there wasn't non-alcoholic anything. There weren't mocktails, there was nothing. And I lost so many friends, not because they were like, oh, you don't drink, but it was just sort of you're not going to the bars anymore and the club, so that's where I would normally see you. And it just sort of, these friendships just sort of like fizzled out because of that. And I was like, which is why I was so happy to move to the Twin Cities, where I'm like, there's so many other areas for us to, sports clubs, and there's faith groups, and there's music groups, and there's so many other ways of being in community together without it all having to revolve around bars.
And I think that human connection is the single most important part of my recovery. So being in community with other people is integral to my recovery.
How's the softball team doing this season?
Our softball team is, we were kind of finished in the middle of the pack, but we've got our season ending tournament this weekend. So that'll be a lot of fun. The St. Paul Sober Softball League. If you look it up, I think it's stpaulcdleague.com. But there's, I think, like 40 teams in the league.
Wow.
So it's a huge community, and it's a lot of fun. So.
Wow. So you have the recovery walk and championship weekend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a big weekend. My wife is like stressing out about our family calendar. She keeps us in line, and she's, I've got to be at the walk around 6:00 in the morning, and then I'll be going to sober softball in the afternoon. And I think grandparents are going to be called in for extra support. So.
When everything just always happens to happen at once. Molly, I cannot believe we're already at the end of our time. Molly, this has been so great to be in conversation with you. I want to have you back on here because I feel like we just topped, to use a cliche, we've just touched the top of the iceberg when it comes to recovery and unpacking this. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. I really appreciated it. And I enjoyed our conversation.
Good. I'm glad. And I want to remind folks that you can join Molly this weekend at the Minnesota Recovery Walk. You can join Team AM 950 by going to minnesotarecovery.org/walk, where you can sign up, register, join Team AM 950, donate, and attend events all month long. And I would be remiss not to mention that you can listen to Minnesota Recovery Connection's radio program, Redefining Recovery, which airs on AM 950 radio every Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. with host Caddy Frink. Thank you again, Molly, for joining us today, and thank you all for listening. I have 2 quick birthday announcements to our friends Roger and Tina. Happy birthday. Up next on WCPT 820 is Choose Views with Richard Chu. On AM 950 radio, it is the Matt McNeil Show. Stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. Then Step Into the Unknown with Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio at 10 p.m. Central. And until tomorrow, keep it queer, America.